everyone, and welcome to the Love Like Crazy podcast. We're your hosts, Jay and Stacey Coleman. We so appreciate you joining in for this new topic that we're going to talk about today that's going to help strengthen our families. And so, Jay, we're going to talk about the topic of technology today.
How to deal with technology as parents.
Yeah.
Now, as we're going to jump into this here in a moment, but I do want to take a second to ask you guys to like, subscribe, share. If you're enjoying the podcast,
Yes.
and we pray that you are, thank you so much for helping us to build this. Give us a comment. Let us know some topics that you'd like for us to talk about. Give us a review. Let us know how we're doing. And as you guys share this, what it actually does is it helps us to build this podcast. Because as Stacey said, we're all about building a stronger marriage and a stronger family. The topic we're going to talk about today is something that I think every parent needs to hear about.
I was going to say a much needed topic.
It really is. I know that this was not as big of an issue whenever we were parenting, but we see this because as pastors, we see this with our younger families in our church. And so in that regards, today we're going to talk about technology as parents, how to deal with technology, some boundaries that need to be set. And this is a big deal. It's a big issue that's in the world that we're in today. Every statistic that you look at shows us that technology is consistently growing, usage, all these different things amongst young people. But some of the statistics are actually somewhat disturbing. Let me share some of these things with you. It shows that 95% of teenagers report that they either have a smartphone or they have access to a smartphone. 46% of teens report to being online almost constantly. Non-school related screen time is almost doubled amongst teenagers from pre-pandemic usage of 3.8 hours per day to an average of 7.7 hours per day. What that's telling us is that our teenagers, our preteens, our young people, your kids are actually spending a ton of time online. And everything that we look at actually shows us that this can somewhat be damaging to them. We're seeing a ton of mental health issues. We're seeing a ton of insecurity. We're seeing a ton of things that kids are dealing with, bullying, all those types of things that is so negative in this world that we're living in.
Yeah, so the digital age, it has great advantages, but some significant downfalls at the same time.
I think that we'd all say that there are aspects of the digital age that we love. There's aspects of technology that are amazing to our life. We can Google things. We can find out the answers that we have. There's a lot of information that is actually at our fingertips.
Yeah.
But I was actually reading a book not too long ago called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry.
Okay.
And one of the things that he noted in this book was that the average attention span pre-2007 was about 12 seconds. Now, there's a lot of things going on in life that keep us busy. But, we know we all have the schedules that we keep and we need to slow down a little bit. But the average attention span before 2007 was about 12 seconds. And you hear that and you're like, that's really not that great.
So what is it now?
Well, since this groundbreaking moment in our society when the iPhone was released, I think it was 2007, the average attention span amongst people has dropped from 12, I think it said, down to about 8 seconds. Now,
wow.
You think, well, that's not too bad. That's only a 4-second difference in the attention span of people. But he writes in the book that the average attention span of a goldfish is 9 seconds. So what that means is we're losing out to goldfish.
Oh, my goodness.
We're distracted.
Yeah,
There's a lot that's going on in our lives where you cannot hold people's attention. Do this. We've talked about this in other episodes. Go to a restaurant. Look around, see how people are interacting with each other. A lot of times they're not.
They're not interacting with each other. They're buried within their phones and not paying attention to anything that's going on around them.
And I'm not going to sit here and pretend that we've never had that issue ourselves. Look, we go out to eat. Sometimes we're answering texts. Sometimes we're looking at emails. Sometimes we're checking out social media. But we try to do better in this regard. And if you do look around at the restaurant, you see tons of people. I would say that the majority of people are more engaged on their smart device than they are engaged with one another.
Yeah, it's true. And so it's one of those things you have to be intentional about, like to say, okay, we're going to go to this restaurant, or we're going to sit down and have a meal at home together, and we're going to put our phones away. We're not going to, be consumed with our smartphone, and we're going to have an actual one-on-one conversation with each other, just like in times past, sitting down and actually talking. How was your day?
Well, we've talked about communication in past episodes, how important it is, but I'm kind of at the place where I think we can sit here and talk about technology and how to deal with it as adults. We know the things that we need to do. And the reality is that a lot of times we're addicted to our smart devices. We're addicted to social media.
And we don't want to admit that we are addicted
We
to
don't.
that.
And if
But
you
it
go back
consumes
and
us.
if you look and research that all of these ones who developed these social media platforms, they did not develop them for us to be used in a healthy way. They have developed those social media platforms to hold on to our attention, to drive our attention back to their site continually. So in other words, they were actually developed and designed to cause us to be addicted to them. And so one of the things that we need to understand is this is a reality in our lives, but check this out. It's also a reality in our kids' lives.
It is.
Because now our young folks, they're addicted. Now, Facebook's for old people, okay?
That's what they say.
And they're more into TikTok. They're more into Snapchat. They're more into Instagram, X, Facebook, all these different social media platforms that they find themselves drawn to. And I think that what I'm seeing is a lot of parents just don't know how to deal with this.
No.
A lot of parents will actually just let their kids stay on their smart. I don't want to, mess with that because
it keeps them occupied.
It keeps them occupied, keeps them out of my hair. And not only that, if I take their cell phone away, they're going to pitch a fit. And I think it kind of comes down to is you need to decide who's going to run your household, who's going to be the parent within your household. And as I like to tell our church, you're not called to be their friend. You're called to be their parent.
But I want to also include that it's not just the cell phones, but it's also the iPads and just sitting them in front of the TV. I mean, any kind of interaction like that.
Well, think about all the things that we have at our
fingertips.
Hands. You've got one on your wrist right there.
Right.
That is
an Apple Watch.
I bought that for you for Christmas, but I told you it's one of my pet peeves. Because think about that.
When you're constantly looking at your watch.
Right. When you're with somebody,
conversation,
and you're trying to engage with them, and their phone, their wrist buzzes because they got a text, and they look down at their wrist. Yeah. And so what I'm saying is that so many times we're distracted, whether it's an Apple Watch, whether it's a smart, phone, whether it is an iPad, all these different pieces of the technology that we have available to us, they are very distracting to us. So how do we deal with these things as parents?
Right. And I think that's a big question. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners want to know.
Well, and I think a lot of people are not talking about it. People know it's a problem. They want answers, but we're not talking about it. And let me say this, a lot of times within the church, we're not really talking about it. The church, we look at that and say, well, we don't see a whole lot of verses dealing with TikTok. We don't see a whole lot of verses dealing with an iPhone. So what do? Well, what we need to do is, as parents, let's deal with technology in a biblical way. Proverbs chapter 24, verse 3 says this: a house is built by wisdom and becomes strong through good sense.
Yeah.
And I love that. Everybody knows that Proverbs is full of principles. It's full of different things to help us build our life strong because it's known as the book of wisdom. John chapter 16, verse 13, Jesus is talking about the Holy Spirit. He says, when the Spirit of truth comes, he will guide you into all truth. So what we need to understand is the Bible may not deal with technology directly, but it does speak to us as parents, as people, about walking in wisdom. And it does talk to us about being led by the Holy Spirit. Yeah. So I shared some statistics with you earlier that are kind of disturbing. I shared with you that the average cell phone usage has risen to about 7.7 hours per day. And what that means is there's a lot of information that our kiddos are getting in their lives. Some of it good, probably a lot of it not so good. We see bullying on the rise. We see all these things, mental health issues amongst our young people. So as parents, we need to be led by the Holy Spirit.
Yes.
We need to be wise, and we need to deal with technology.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the things that we can do.
Okay.
All right. So I think, first of all, we need to set realistic boundaries, and we need to stick to them. So let's talk about that.
I think that the key word there is realistic. Don't, if you look at, you hear this episode, you say, oh man, this is a problem. I got to deal with that. And you go to your 13-year-old and say, give me your phone, and you smash it with a hammer. That's just not realistic. They're probably, going to pitch a fit because now they don't have any usage of their cell phone. And so I think you have to come up with a realistic mindset, realistic boundaries that you're going to put in place. And here's another key part about that: stick with them.
Yeah.
Your kids are going to probably not be, if they've had unlimited access to their smart devices, unlimited access to usage of TikTok and all these different things, they're probably not going to be on board with this immediately. Oh yeah, mom, dad, the statistics are not so great. So I think that we need to, cut back on
No, they
screen
think you're
time.
just, cutting off their left arm.
Probably one of the biggest questions that's out there, one of the biggest questions that's asked is, what age do we give our kids a smartphone? Here's another question that pops up on a regular basis. How much screen time is healthy? How much screen time is healthy for your young people to have? You got an 8-year-old, you got a 13-year-old. How do I find the balance there?
Well, I think a realistic way of setting boundaries is first knowing how much time your children are spending on those devices. And I know for myself, like every Sunday, my weekly usage or average amount of time pops up on my Apple Watch, and it tells me whether it's up a certain percentage or down a certain percentage. And sometimes I look at it and go, oh my goodness, I didn't realize that I was on my phone that many hours, averaging per day. And so I think to be realistic and to be able to set a healthy boundary, you need to start with knowing really how much how much time are you spending on these devices?
Yeah, I think that it's great to bring that up because, we're talking about, dealing with technology with our kiddos, but let's be honest with ourselves and see how much time we're spending on social media,
Because
on
we're
our
setting
phone.
the example for our children.
Exactly right. So as a family, sit down, have a conversation about, where you are with technology, and then make a decision as mom and dad. Sit down, make a decision about what you feel is healthy for your family. And I've talked to families who say, okay, after 7 o'clock, screen time, we shut
We're going to put
down,
all the phones
and we're going
away.
to put the phones away. We're going to sit down and have dinner as a family. We're going to spend time together. And then, so you set the boundaries within your household and make sure that they're realistic. The next thing is this: at what age did we give our kiddos a smartphone? Well, here's some statistics for you. I think it's kind of funny because I've had parents tell me that their kids are asking for smartphones as young as 5 and 6 years old. That's what they want for Christmas. Stanford University cites that 25% of children receive their first smartphone by 10.7, age 10.7, not quite 11, but that's kind of the age bracket. 75% of them received their first smart device by the age of 12.6. About halfway through being 12, they received that first smart device. Now, here's the truth in that regards. There are some who get that smart device, that smartphone, much younger. There are some who actually get it a little bit older, but that's the average. We also see that mental health issues are on the rise amongst people between the ages of 12 to 19 years of age, especially when you're dealing with things like anxiety, especially when you're dealing with things like depression. Those things are on the rise. You will never convince me that technology does not play into that. Here's how I know that. When did the smart devices start entering the scene? 2007, 2008, and they have steadily risen throughout the years. What we're seeing is mental health issues are also trending towards the rise as we see smartphone usage on the rise. So you'll never convince me that things like social media, Snapchat, TikTok, Facebook, X, smartphones, gaming, especially during the adolescent years, whenever they're learning the crucial skills like social skills, things of that nature, you can't convince me that these things do not play into that as they're isolating themselves, as they're constantly looking at that smart device, as they're gaining their, maybe different, insecurity issues based off the amount of likes or comments, self-esteem issues based off of what people comment on what they post. So here's what I would tell you, parents, we have to put boundaries in place. Make sure that they're realistic, but put those boundaries in place as to when they're going to get the smart device, when they're going to engage on social media. And as you put those limits on the screen time, make sure that you back them up.
And each parent, you're going to have the fight of the peer pressure. Well, my friend, got a phone earlier, or, different ones that are, they're biting for your kid's time. And so it's important that you put those boundaries in place, limit that screen time, and do it for for nothing else, for their mental health, and so that they aren't so stressed out and dealing with self-esteem issues and so forth.
Well, I think that you hit the nail right on the head there, is to quit worrying about whatever their other families are doing,
Hmm.
quit worrying about what their friends are
Be
doing.
concerned about your family and what's best for them.
Exactly right. You are called to parent your kids, not your neighbor's kids. So focus on your kiddos and put those realistic boundaries in place and make sure that you stick with those realistic boundaries. So, all right, what's next?
Okay, so the next thing that we need to do is focus on the protection over privacy.
We've talked about this in past episodes. When we were dating, we had a long distance relationship, and there was a privacy device that was attached to the phone, and it was called
The phone cord.
the phone cord.
And the phone was attached to the wall normally.
I would sit in the hallway in my parents' home, and I would talk to you on the phone, and we would talk for hours. But your parents were privy to what you were talking
Yeah.
about, because that cord would
Right,
only
they
stretch.
could hear your conversation, and so you weren't able to keep secrets and hide things. Right.
Well, and my mom and dad had the mindset, and I think it was kind of in that day and age, it was accepted. Privacy is a privilege. It's not a right, it's a privilege.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
so that's something that, trust, all those different things that as you're growing and maturing that you were gaining. And so we need to understand that with our kids, privacy is it's not a right, it is a privilege. And as parents, it is our responsibility to protect our children. And we want to protect them from a culture, the enemy, our spiritual enemy, the devil. His sole purpose in life is to destroy. And so he wants to destroy us. He wants to destroy our marriage. He wants to destroy our family, and he wants to destroy our kiddos. So it is our responsibility as parents to educate ourselves about the culture. It is our responsibility as parents to also educate our children about the agenda of the culture. John chapter 10, verse 10 says, and speaking of the devil here, it says, the thief, his purpose is to steal, kill, and destroy. And Jesus says, my purpose is to give them a rich and satisfying life. So what does that mean? It means that I'm going to focus on protection over privacy. Your kiddos are going to scream about, I have a right to privacy. No, you do not have a right to privacy. It's a privilege. It's not a right. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do everything that's within my power to protect you as my kid.
Okay, so one of the things that we did when our boys did have a cell phone was we told them, we can take your cell phone at any point and we can look at which way that you're using your phone, what the text that's being sent and so forth. So to keep them from, maybe trying to hide things. And there were times that we did look at their phones to see.
Well, what the boys
that
didn't
was going.
realize when we bought each of them, their first phone was a little slider phone that they could text on. They really couldn't do much of anything.
It wasn't necessarily a smartphone.
And they didn't start really getting smartphones until they were probably 14, 15 years old.
Yeah,
We've
older.
talked about this with them. And as they were a little bit older, but what they didn't realize is we actually bought the phone for them as a way to punish them if need be, because when we would take their phone, it was literally was like you were like cutting off their arm. And they would do everything that they could to be able to get that phone back. So it was a way that we utilized as a way to be able to parent them in a better way.
Right.
Now, in that regard, here's what I'm going to tell you. If we are going to focus on protection over privacy, there are parental controls on the phone. Use them.
Yeah, you definitely have the ability to control their data use on their phone.
But here's what I also want to tell you. Your teenagers are smart enough to figure out how to get around those parental controls. So what you need to be able to do as the parent, you need to know the passwords. You need to regularly check their smart device, that phone. You need to check their bedroom. And I remember growing up, my mom, usually once a year, she would do what was known as deep cleaning, where she would go throughout the house and really, deep clean. And there were several times that she went into my bedroom and she cleaned down under the bed and all this kind of stuff. And this was back, before I came to Christ. And I remember I had some cigarettes hidden away in a secret place because I was probably 12, 13 years old and I was smoking. And Mom found those smokes as she was cleaning my room. But guess what? It was not one of these things like, hey, that's my room. You can't go in there. I deserve privacy. I knew that I lived in my mom and dad's house,
Right.
and they could do whatever they want because it wasn't
Mhm.
my house. It
It
was
was
their
their house.
house.
That's right.
You need to understand that that smartphone that your teenager or your preteen has, it's not theirs, it's yours. You pay the plan. You purchased it. You may have given it to them as a gift, but it's still yours. And if you're going to focus on protection over privacy, what you need to be able to do is have access to passwords. Have the
Yeah.
understanding, just like you said a few moments ago, Stacey, that we're regularly going to check your phone. We're regularly going to check in on you, not to invade any type of privacy, but to protect you as your
Yeah.
parent.
And parents need to realize that they are the ones in control.
And yeah, it's a lot of times we give into because they complain, they nag, all these different
And it's
things.
easier to give in to them.
So I would tell you this: don't give in to them. Choose to protect your child. Choose to be the parent. So a couple other things: make sure as a parent you want to delay social media as long as possible. Social media is one of those things.
It's got its pros and it's got its cons,
It's probably got more cons than it does pros.
especially for the younger ones. Yes.
And I would tell you that, a lot of times when it comes to self-esteem, a lot of times when it comes to peer pressure, there are things that our kiddos are facing now that we did not face when we were young.
And our kids did not until they got older.
Yeah. And it's not it's coming against them on social media, and it takes it to a whole nother level. So one of the things that you can see is the amount of time spent on social media is directly related to loneliness in their life, a feeling of loneliness, the feeling of depression within their life, the feeling of anxiety within their lives. So what that tells me as a parent, I'm going to do everything that I can. I'm going to focus on protection over privacy.
And we live in society where we're being told like, well, this is how we stay connected. This is how we know what's going on. But in actuality, we're really more disconnected than we've ever been because it's strictly social media and not, there's the texting and not the personal phone call and the personal interaction with people. And so our kids are not learning how to communicate properly, and they're using everything in, short term, with their texting.
On that note, what you're talking about is, first of all, we're saying set realistic boundaries and stick to them as the parent, focus on protection over privacy. But what you just shared actually plays into the next thing we want to talk about.
Okay, so we want to talk about setting technology free times.
What you're specifically saying is have times and have it understood within the family that you're going to create activities, you're going to create opportunities where everybody is going to put their phone away, and you're going to focus on what? Engaging in conversation, spending time together, building your family. And so I'm going to tell you some things that you can do, specifically set times with your family that no phones are allowed. I kind of gripe about this a little bit. We do family night, usually about every 2 weeks or so with our family. All of our kids are adult kids. They're not kids anymore. They're adults. They're married. They've got their own family. We love to do family night. I like to cook. And so I'll cook. Everybody will come over. And, there's times where I look around and everybody's on their phone. I'll fuss, gripe, put your phones away. And everybody, puts their phone away. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I've never had a moment that I haven't been on my phone. Sometimes the kids have fussed at me, put your phone away. But the best times are whenever everybody is engaging each other, everybody's having conversation, we're developing relationship in a deeper way with each other. So have those times, set technology-free times. It could be a family gathering where you're going to, eat dinner together. It could be a family activity where you're going to go and do something.
Or setting a certain time at bedtime. This is when we're going to put our phones away so that we can go to sleep.
Well, and that's what I'll tell you. A lot of times kiddos, they go to bed, then they're on their phone till, 1, 2, 3
and it
o'clock
keeps
in
them
the
up all
morning.
night.
You need to make sure that that's something that you're monitoring, that you're on top of. So here's some ideas for you. Dinner time, great time. Put your phones away. Nobody's allowed to be on your phone while we're at dinner. In the car, when you're traveling together as a family, everybody put your phones away. We're going to engage each other. We're going to talk to one another. At bedtime, no phones are allowed after we lay down to go to bed. I don't care if you're 16 years old, you want to talk to your boyfriend, your girlfriend, whatever. Put those phones away. And you have to look for those moments with your kids that you can put your phone away, that you can engage, you can talk about what is going on in life, how you're doing, how your kiddo's doing, how the family's doing. take advantage of those times, because what happens is they actually build your family. So set technology free times. All right, what's next?
Well, and I just want to say, and for the parents, that's something that you have to stay on top of, because it will definitely get away from you. Be intentional on that. So we also need to stay current with technology.
Now, that's a scary thought, because I am 51, going to be 52 years old here rather soon. You're close to that. Well, actually, you're not.
We're
You're very
not here
young.
to talk about my age.
29 years of age and holding. But a lot of times whenever you start getting a little bit older, or even as a parent with kiddos, you are of the mindset like, man, that's scary. I don't know, all the stuff to keep up with. TikTok, what is that? I don't even know what that is, I'm not saying I don't know what that is. I'm talking as a parent who might say, I don't know how to deal with that. So technology can be intimidating, but here's the thought. It's our kids. So we have to know that in our kids' world, we want to stay current. Yeah. We're going to put the work in to build our family. So we need to make sure that we're up to date on what's going on. We all see these things, on social media, the little code talk and all that kind of stuff. What does that mean? I've gone to my kids before, like, what does this mean?
Yeah.
And they will tell me what that means. So
technology is changing so quickly, and it is hard to stay on top of it, but that's something that you need to stay current with.
I said this some time back. It is not a sin to grow old, but our kids may get caught up in sin if we become a dinosaur to technology. So we need to do everything that we can to make sure that we are doing what we can as a parent to stay current with technology. And you've got to look at the amount of time that you're spending on your smart device, whether it's social media, texting, whatever. Is there an unhealthy amount of time being spent on your phone? And so in that regard, change always begins with me. Don't focus on the kiddos as much as myself. What are the things that need to change in me? And then as I begin to see God change those things, then I can begin to focus on leading my family towards that change. Because here's what I'm going to tell you. If I'm not willing to change, then it's going to be very hard for me to bring change into my family.
And our kids are watching us, and they're going to say, well, Dad, Mom, you're on your phone all the time. And so why are you asking me not to be on the phone? So I think, by watching, like I mentioned earlier, our weekly allowance of time, pops up on our phone. We see how much we're using technology as well. And so make it a goal for us to set down our phones and be that example for our children.
Absolutely. So it starts with an honest evaluation. It starts with maybe me needing to repent of some things that I've allowed to begin to take priority within my life and take control of my life, and then make the changes in my life, and then begin to bring those changes within the family. So I feel like we've given you guys some great things to talk about within your marriage, within your family, some great resources for you to be able to talk about and really have honest, open communication within the family.
I think so.
So that's it for this episode. Hope you guys have had a great time. And as always, like, subscribe, share. We hope that you're enjoying the Love Like Crazy podcast. I know we're having an absolute blast. I love hanging out with you.
Yes.
But it's a lot of fun to be able to sit and just kind of share some things that are on our heart. And give us a review, leave a comment. We love to hear from you guys as you in fact help us build this podcast. So thank you so much. And as always, I'm Jay.
And I'm Stacey.
And this is Love Like Crazy.